with you again this week. What's the haps? How's
I'm
your
in a much
trip?
better place than that last episode you all had to suffer through. I've had a holiday. I'm feeling good. Nice to just reconnect as a family unit. We
Yes.
did something different on this holiday. We typically go away with people, other families or my parents on every trip. This trip, we've just had the four of us, just the four of us.
Love that.
Just to have special time with each other. And whilst, I would have loved mum and dad there to help with the occasional dinner or lunch, it's just been nice to have special time together. Just being present and away from the work computer, which seems to take up most of our time.
Yeah, and also away from being the illness and the freezing cold in Melbourne,
the
and like getting some
bugs.
vitamin D and
Sunny far North Queensland,
yes.
Port Douglas. We love holidaying there. It's great for kids, for anyone
Yes.
listening. They've got the wildlife park, they've got Hartley's Crocodile Adventures. You can do breakfast with the birds. There's obviously the beach and pool, and it's very family friendly. So
Yeah, I
highly
love
recommend
that.
for anyone thinking about a holiday for a young family. Highly recommend.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's such a circuit breaker, isn't it? I mean, we've spoken about this before around the fact that, we all live busy lives. We've all got a million things that we've got on our to-do list, but sometimes it is really important to just stop and smell the roses,
Yeah, so important when we're running as fast as we do. You can't, it's not possible to keep going.
No.
So just nice to pause and catch our breath and get some vitamin D and, not be attached to work email all the time.
100%. No, I
I
love
actually said,
that.
and big learning for me this time. Like I said to my team, I'm actually uncontactable. For my whole career, I've always been the person that said, "Oh, I'll be keeping an eye on email. So if it's urgent,"
Yes.
this time I said, "I am not contactable. I will not be checking emails. If it is emergency, you can text me."
Yes.
They coped, more than fine. So
Yeah.
also a good lesson for me that I have a really amazing, competent group of people around me, and they can get on with the job. So
I'm always like, we're not saving lives here. I mean, we're not in the medical profession. We're not
gotta
saving
learn that.
lives.
You've got to remind yourself of that.
You
Like,
do.
we are not saving lives. That's
No.
exactly right.
100%. As you know, we've kicked off the segment in the podcast called The Vault. So we've got lots of listeners calling in about things that are keeping them up at night, which is really good and really interesting because we can sit here and, have a yarn and think about different topics to talk about, every couple of weeks. But I think it's amazing, like asking our community, like, what the hell is keeping you up at night? What are you stressed about? So that's been really good. And we actually had someone call in recently about a topic that I thought, Liv, would be fun for us to explore. Less of a sort of usually the Volta mini episodes, but this one I thought, he brought up some pretty cool topics. So what I'm going to do is he actually flagged two areas that we can talk about. I want us to spend this episode talking about the first area around how friendships change once you have children. So let's cut to that recording.
Hey Lee and team, Lucci here. Just based on topics I want to discuss with you folks, two topics that I think is top of mind for us as new parents. Our little daughter's 18 months old, Gemma. Been living in New York for the last 6 to 7 years, and obviously different challenges, being in a big crazy city, small apartment, and so forth. But I think, one thing that we find as new parents that's totally different to what folks have been talking about is, I think it's the new social life. What do we mean by that? I think, just basic things they took for granted as a couple, such as going out, going to catch up with friends, having dinners or lunches. That's totally different now. I wouldn't say it's a struggle. I think it's just a big adjustment. And it really depends on also your friend circle in the city that you live in. So in New York, most of our friends, although they're coupled up, still not married or in relationships, and some are living in separate apartments or just moved in together. So that's a different stage of life than some of the friends back home in Oz. And it's okay. It's just when you have a under 2-year-old and everything's bound by sleeping schedules, that's one of the challenges that we've faced. So, friends, having to be flexible, or we have to be flexible, or sometimes you just can't go out to some of the things that you originally had planned for, and that's okay. I think it's all about sort of this new social life of hanging out with friends at a similar stage of life. That, I think, also, living overseas without having immediate family around, whether it be by parents or siblings, that can be a bit of a challenge because, as much as you want to pay someone for a babysitter, it's still a foreign person, and, there's a bit of trust issues there about building trust and rapport. So, we do have daycare during the day, which is fantastic, 9 to 5, but in the evenings mostly, it's a challenge to get out for dinner. So it's either one of the parents stays home, or we usually just eat, cook, or order out at home. So I think, like I said, it's not a struggle; it's just something different that you adjust to. But sometimes it is interesting because you're living in one of the most dynamic cities in the world, where people don't have starting dinner until 8-9 p.m. That has been a bit of an adjustment.
Yeah, that was an interesting one from a dad. First thoughts around what he said.
First of all, Luch, love your reference to folks. Y'all folks. How y'all folks going with this? I love folks. So great. Love that. First place to start. Okay, back to the actual content. Our life's different now, isn't it? Like, I think that's just the reality that we're not 25 anymore, and we, remember when it was Saturday and, you just send a text to your friends to be like, so what are we doing tonight?
What are we doing? Yeah.
Whereas now we have to plan 6 to 8 weeks in advance. Like, that's just, I don't know. It's so hard because, I mean, I do, ask me the question. I miss my old life. I miss how social I was.
Yes.
I love freedom. I love silence. I love being able to do whatever I want whenever I want to do it. It just doesn't work like that anymore. So
doesn't work like that.
I think, we really, the first place is probably just acceptance. And then nothing's going to change unless you change something. Remember my tattoo? Talk about that lots on this podcast. It's just about making time to do the things that are really important and what fills your cup up. And being, Lee, you're fantastic at this, scheduling, catch-ups and dinners and parties, milestone moments and opportunities to bring people together. We might not do it every weekend, but if we do it every 6 weeks or every 3 months, or even if we get it done, 2 times a year, then, we're doing a good job. What were your reflections?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, first of all, when he mentioned the fact that so they obviously have their child, but a lot of their friends don't have children yet, right? So I experienced that. I mean, you did, I guess, to some extent as well, Liv, where we were one of the first to have children, or at least I certainly was in the friendship circle of, obviously we've got lots of different friendship circles, but I felt as though of my closest friends, I was one of the first. And then what I felt was a huge amount of FOMO because I was stuck to this little newborn, and everyone's like, oh, I'm watching on Instagram, I'm at this fabulous restaurant, or off I go to this fabulous place, and I'm like, oh, well, I want to do that too. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there with my child being like, can't anyone else be chained to a baby? Yes. So that was hard for me because I have such FOMO, and we're both very social people, so that was a big adjustment. And now I feel there are so many more of us that have children, and so I'm feeling less it's changed. Like on a Saturday, I'm not thinking, oh God, what am I missing out on anymore? But I was.
I'm the only person at home.
Yeah, yes. Did you experience that when you had, Bubs' first time? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I told everyone I went into retirement. That was, Liv was hanging up her party shoes because it was you did have to go into retirement for a little bit. Yeah. And you're right. We were probably in the front pack of having children. One of the things that I did was entertain a lot at our house. So I could still see, a lot of my friends, we do dinners or we just do takeaway, and people were fine with that. And people would come and lob over and I'd be able to put the kids into bed.
Yeah.
We just had to find what worked.
New ways.
And for the most, people might even come here for pre-drinks, and then I'd stay here and they'd go out, whatever typically, worked.
Yeah.
We just had to do things that were different and kind of be okay with it, and make sure that we were creating those opportunities where Mark got to go out with his mates, or I got to go out with the girls, or just doing those times so you did feel like you were still participating, and finding other ways to connect in. I'm not a big phone caller or a texter, but I probably had to do a little bit more of that to make sure that I remained connected with my close group of friends.
Yeah, and that's, I think it's a good point you raise. Like, even if you are just tapping into the front end of the evening, and then I guess the next day you don't have the hangover that everyone else has. So
I just, it makes me like, I shake at the thought of having a hangover with kids. Like, I've done it one too many times, and I've learnt my lesson. There we go. I've said it. I have learned my lesson. It's brutal, isn't it?
Yeah. So, completely different ball game.
And working full time, the weekends are precious. You can't, to go out on a Friday night and then spend half of Saturday in bed. Yeah. Tommy would be like, "Mummy, it's daytime. Why are you still in bed?" The guilt really eats away at me. So
big time.
Yeah, the blowouts are very few and far between now.
100%. And scheduled in, as you said, 8 weeks in advance, and everyone is worded up about it.
Anyone who wants to come, let us know.
Yeah. So I want to know, did any of your friendships change when you had children? Like, anyone in your life that you kind of went, things started just shifting a little bit for you?
Oh, look, I think certainly friends who didn't have children, perhaps we didn't see each other as much. We might have caught up very regularly, but it's become, what was once maybe once a month is now twice a year.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that they don't love me any less and I don't love them. It's just finding the time and, the short windows that we have, are less.
Yeah.
I mean, I was always very conscious, particularly around friends who perhaps were single or were even in a relationship and desperately wanting a baby and, having a hard time to conceive. I was very mindful and conscious around that.
Yes.
Because, we all, grandparents are guilty of this, right? Every time they catch up with their friends, look at Henry and look at Johnny and isn't he so cute? Like, it becomes all that, their only reference point. So I think that's a really good thing to be mindful of, but also not being shy about it, because I know all of my friends who don't have kids or, they love me and they, love my children and they want to hear about it. They just don't want to hear about it over the 5-course meal, right?
Yeah. And it's actually interesting that you referenced that, and I don't know if you feel comfortable with me talking about it, but remember when we were both kind of in the stages where we're sort of looking to fall pregnant, and I fell pregnant first and then you fell pregnant soon after. Our kids were only a couple of months apart, but I remember that initial feeling when we were catching up for the first time, and I was like, I'm so excited to tell you, but I also, and I think other people can relate to this when they've got, friends who are in similar life stages. I'm like, I just really hope this doesn't come across like, and make you start thinking, oh, I still don't have a child and I want that too. Like, how did you receive that? Do you remember that discussion we had when I first told you?
Yeah, I do. And I think I was aware enough, and I know you so well, that I knew that you would be feeling like that. And my first place was absolute joy for you. But second of, like, let's be real, like there was that pit in my stomach that was like, when is it going to be me? Why is there something wrong with me? I was very much in those early stages. I was very lucky to fall pregnant, very shortly after. But I think that's real, and great friendships are very aware of that, and it's such a good thing to talk about. And we had that conversation around how I was feeling and how you were feeling, and everyone's very much doing it together. You just have to be so connected and openly communicating about how you're going in your own personal journey, which can be hard at times.
It can
be
very hard. Raw. I mean,
very raw.
We've been friends for like since high school, since year 7 day, ages. And yet even that, you're still kind of just working through new dynamics, right? And even speaking about high school friends, I mean, I had a very close friend where I guess, so she didn't have a child. I did have a child. I guess I wasn't able to put as much into the friendship that I used to be able to do, and we were very much in each other's pockets. And because of that, our friendship sort of fell apart a little bit. And I felt as though there may have been a little bit of resentment from her perspective that I wasn't giving her as much, but I was giving her everything I could, with the time and energy that I had. And so it is one of those ones where, so for me, a couple of, actually 2 instances where very close friends, it just all of a sudden our friendship spun on its head as soon as I sort of had a child, because I wasn't able to sort of give as much. And I think that's a real tester to a friendship when you've been friends for years.
I can actually think of 2 conversations with friends where I've had to say, I'm sorry. It's not that I don't love you or care about you.
Yeah.
I just don't have the time. Like, I'm a pussy's boat. Like, I cannot give you any more.
Yeah.
Like, if you want more, I'm you're going to have to look elsewhere because I can't give it to you.
Yeah.
And it's that's a good thing to do. Like, if I think, to anyone who's feeling like that or feels that a friendship has changed, I think having, if it's a very close friend, then a close friend would want to talk about it. And it's much better to, have the conversation rather than, allow, a drifting of, ways, I think.
Absolutely. Because if you don't say it and then the silence grows for too long, then it's very difficult to mend. Yeah. Very difficult to mend. So, I mean, it is sad. And I remember, there was 2 very close friends that happened with at the time. And I remember thinking, God, I'm already so hard on myself as it is to be, the best I can be in the different areas and facets of my life. I'm like, Jesus, have I really failed these people too? But I guess there has to be a level of kind of compromise and understanding. Even in myself, I got to a point where I was like, look, this is what I can offer right now. And I can't feel bad about that. The days where we spoke every day and I knew exactly what you ate for breakfast, and yes, in our 20s, that's what it was like. Yeah. Those days are over now. And even us, we've had a lifelong friendship and we'll text, maybe once every couple of weeks if we're lucky. Yeah. But I know that, and I do that with a lot of my very close friends, that I know that you're all there for me. Yeah. It's really changed.
Yeah, it's more about quality than quantity now.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? In your 20s, you're like, I just want to be popular and have lots of friends and as many friends as possible and, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Now, I'm lucky to count, on one hand, my closest friends who are my ride or dies. Yes. And, there are certainly, the additional circle that know that I care about them. I just, it's about how you cut up your time and prioritise at this point in time and find opportunities to connect.
Yeah, big time. And I think, to your point around, you're not big on the phone. I'm a big text, not a big texter, but I think that's the way I kind of, if I can communicate with my friends, it's usually just a quick text here or there. But it is a real shift. And so for this person who called in, and the other thing that they mentioned was it's not so easy for them to get a babysitter because their family aren't based in New York City, and that's another big one for us all. Like even more recently, and I spoke about a few episodes ago when I was in Greece about getting a foreign babysitter to look after our child while we went to a wedding, and that was hard, right? And it was hard because now Noah, my oldest, is nearly 4 years old. He understands, and it really I have to really do a huge amount of work up front if I'm going to get a babysitter.
Tell me about the process.
So literally,
what were the steps you took?
So for example, I've got a dinner coming up in a week's time, right? And it's with my usual nanny's not available, and so it's one of her besties, and I feel comfortable that because it's recommended to me, so fantastic. Bestie lives down the road at her parents' house. Already I'm kind of like, you're vetted, I'm fine because I feel like, comfortable about that. However, next step is getting my toddler comfortable with you. So I have a play date set up for her and Noah. Now, Charlie will be at daycare, my 2.5-year-old. He'll be at daycare that day, but Charlie typically with the dinners will put them both to bed and Charlie will typically sleep through. It's Noah who will often get out of his little toddler bed and run back out and be like, Mum, it seems a bit weird. Where are you going? Where are you? What are you doing? So he's a lot more so he's the one I have to get over the line. So they have a little play date set up. I've spoken to him about this probably for the last 2 weeks. George's friends, one of her best friends, they go to your school actually. They used to go to your school, Anyway, it's her best friend. Her name's this. And so she's going to play with you. And I'm like, you can show her your puzzles and maybe you can go to the park. So I'm wording him up. And the best time I find to do that is after he's had his bath and we're just putting cream on him, getting him ready for bed. And I'm like, aren't you so excited to be hanging out with this new person in a week's time? And now he's at the point where he's like, when am I going to meet her? I'm so excited, right? Because I've been planting the seed. So he will meet her and then at least start becoming familiar before she's even babysat for us.
That's a great thing to do. Do you think if you didn't set that up and you just went cold turkey, which is typically how I've done babysitters, I'm a very trusting person. Sometimes I wish I wasn't. Do you think if he was to wake up and find a stranger in the house, it would just be...
He would lose it. He would lose it. And so even in Greece, obviously, we had no idea about it. There was a neighbour. She was 16 years old. I'd never met her in my life. And I was like, recommended through Airbnb. Okay, I'll meet with her first. So she came and met with the boys. And I was like, she seems harmless. I met her dad at one point and stuff. So I was like, I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, but it's still a risk, right? Yeah. But I pretended to know her as though she was my best friend because I felt like he needs to feel comfortable. So when she was around, I was like, and aren't you so glad that so-and-so's here and she's going to read a book to you now? And so he fed off my energy. And so then when she was with him in the evening, so what ended up happening was he woke up, we were about to walk out the door and he sees her. He'd met her before, obviously, because we had the play date, and he got all excited. Can we read a book again? And I said, okay, you can read one more book. Charlie was asleep, and so he felt comfortable. So that's kind of been the process the hardest part now is, though, they often say he doesn't want to go to sleep because he's so excited that they're there, right? Better for him to be excited than to be nervous AF, I
think that's so true. I think that's right, that Noah's looking to you as just Tommy because they're at the age of, is this okay?
Is this safe?
And, you do have to give them that level of confidence, but goddamn, you've got to know in yourself that, this is the right thing.
Absolutely, particularly
really
like the overseas one was the real kind of risky business. I feel like for some reason being back in Melbourne, a friend of my usual nanny, I feel a lot more comfortable with. However, they really do look to you to be like, are we all good here before they get on board? Have you ever had a foreign person, as in just someone
Douglas,
you don't know?
In Port Douglas, we got a babysitter, so for the second time, so it's through a nanny group.
Yes.
Cairns, Port Douglas nanny group.
Yes.
The first experience I had, a year ago was outstanding. She texts me every 15 minutes. The boys are fine. Yeah. Was sending me photos.
Right.
So given the experience was so positive and I was so nervous about doing it, it gave me a lot of confidence to do it again this time. Yeah. This time rather than night, because similar, I was too stressed about Tommy waking up and losing it. So we were out for dinner, so we did a lunch. So Harry was asleep and Tommy, whether he dozed off or not, I don't know. But there was more to do. They could do more activity based rather than be worried about a mummy and daddy going to come home at night time.
Yes.
So we just did something slightly different, but again, an amazing experience, and can recommend that group to anyone.
I think as well, that's probably not a bad idea. It is easier during the day to some extent. So what happened with us was we had the babysitter in Sifnos in Greece for 2 nights in a row, given the wedding events. That from then on stuffed up his sleep. Because as in from then on, he would wake up when we were all together for the next week and a half. He'd wake up and be like, are you still there? Are you still there? Even though he was excited by the babysitter, even though he didn't want to fall asleep, it's almost like he's just testing it now. He's like, no, I know that you disappeared when I was asleep the other time. So I'm sort of checking. And I wonder if that's maybe how we've got into this cycle of him now waking up a lot. It was never that way before. Like I felt so smug about the fact that we always had the babysitters, the kids would sleep and off we went. But now we've got a nearly 4-year-old and the 2-year-old. It's a different ball game. So I'm still trying to navigate
Mummy and Daddy
that.
Are coming home. Like I'm
That's
constantly saying that to Tom.
Yes.
Mummy and
Same.
Daddy will come back.
Yes.
Mummy and Daddy are never leaving you.
Yes.
I mean, Mummy goes on holidays and goes to work, but Mummy's always coming
back. Yes.
Is the main thing.
Absolutely.
It's kind of working out what their anxiety or their worry is and just trying to really target it.
Yeah, I think for Noah, he's like, oh, great, this could be a great opportunity if mum and dad aren't here for me to stay up. He comes out all eager. too smart for his own
God
good. He's
love
like,
him.
no,
God
like,
love him.
because I don't
You
have
still there, Mum?
Yeah.
I'm freaking through. Yeah.
pretty
watch
pretty
YouTube.
Sure. Yeah. Literally, and I like even for the first time when we had the babysitter in Greece, as I said, we were about to walk out the door. He sees the babysitter. He wakes up. He sees the babysitter, and I'm like, okay, one book and then bed. So we go off to this event, and the event happens to be like a 3-minute walk from our house. So at like an hour and a half later, I was like, let me just walk home and just double check that she's all good and that the boys are all good. Noah's still up. He's sitting there
Grease time,
doing
mate.
like puzzles with her, and I'm like, didn't we say like one more book? And he looks at me all sheepishly, and he's like, oh, but Penelope and I were having so much fun. And I was like, I'm like, time
Did
for
Penelope
bed,
get
mate.
into
Like,
trouble?
no, she was like staring at me, being like, well, I don't
What do you
know.
want me to
She
do?
did it, yeah.
Right.
And because there was a language barrier, because
Yeah.
she only spoke Greek as well, and I like my boys understand but can't speak. So she was just kind of agreeing with everything that he said. So he just takes them for a ride. Like, this is what I mean. So I think every other night he was like, oh, good, I might be able to like stay up all night and have a little party if my parents are around.
goodness.
So I think I've got problems. Like, can you imagine when he's a
Okay.
teenager? Like, Liv, we're going to have dramas.
He's cut from the same cloth as his mother.
He'll be the one filling up the empty, he'll finish the
yeah.
wine bottle and fill it up with water and place it back in the cabinet,
that
being
good
like,
old
no one
vodka
will
and
ever know.
tea. One of my friends' dads used to put a permanent texter.
Texter,
line.
I've seen that.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
You might even know which friend I'm talking about. Shout out. But I don't know if that stopped us. I feel like
Yeah.
we still drunk it and fill it up with water. But it
Up
did
to the
stop us
line.
for a good amount of time. So hot tip once you've got teenagers, get that permanent texter and put those lines around those liquor bottles.
Oh, can you? Oh, and like look under the bed for all the empty bottles.
yeah.
Remember, Liv,
Or
you
over the back
loved to.
fence. You should just do a javelin throw of a black bag of Woodstock cans. And whatever
Cruisers.
else. I think Mum and Dad found them once. They're like, oh, someone's had a party.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't
I
me.
have no idea who
No
that
idea.
could be.
No idea. Definitely wasn't me. It was Vic.
Oh, I feel like as well. So, and like even just speaking of that, obviously this is a point. I mean, we've got young children, right? 2-3 years old, like toddlers ages. So, I feel like comes a phase where we do get your life back. You were sitting here going, oh, we do miss those days. You'll get it back, but it's almost when they become a bit more independent. And I wonder when that would be. What do you think? Like, how old do they need to be? Like, late primary school when you get your life back? Or when do you get your life back? Or when they're
I
in
reckon
prep?
probably sooner than.
Yeah.
I think you've just got to find the right network of support around you. But once they're less dependent on us,
Yeah.
you're probably right. Sometime in primary school,
Yeah.
Any parent I talk to now who's got adolescent or teenage kids just says it's still hugely challenging. It's
Yeah.
just that the challenges are very different.
Different.
And sometimes a lot bigger than.
Yes.
But you're sleeping more generally,
Yes.
unless you've got a child who opens, escapes at 9 o'clock at night and goes out partying at 15.
Yeah.
But I think, you just got to survive. That's what we're in. Just got to adapt. Just got to do what we can and find time for ourselves.
Absolutely. I think in closing out, like, here we're talking about more the friendships and how our lives change. And they do say, what is it? Friends for a season, friends for a reason, and friends for a lifetime. Oh, what is it? Something like that. And I think, I don't know, that can't be any more true.
Don't look at me.
Everyone, how good was that? Just curtsying while I
what
just
you're
butchered
saying. I
that.
know what you're
But
saying.
and I think that's what we probably have to accept, particularly on the friendship front. There are some friends that you'll have for a season of your life, which just is just amazing. And I know I've had to grieve some friendships. I mean, we all have along the way, because for whatever reason in the new season, do you know what I mean?
Friends for a season, friends for
Friends
a period
for-
of time,
and then
whether
there's
it
friends
was
for a
when we were
lifetime.
adolescent.
Yes.
Friends for a reason. So many mum friends. Like, we've got new friends.
That's right.
New friends as a result of having children.
Yes.
And then friends for a lifetime.
Yeah.
You and me.
Yeah.
Right?
You can kind of
Yeah.
like float the way, you ride the waves together. But, and I think the one thing that for me was really acceptance around that, because as we said earlier, in our 20s, we wanted to be best friends with everyone and we wanted to be cool. And even if we weren't cool, we thought we were cool, and like all those things we were trying. And I think, to have a friendship fail for me felt like such a big failure in myself. And what did I do wrong and things like that. So, I think it really acceptance around that, and knowing that, okay, well, life changes and, you know, you're not going to be besties for a lifetime with everyone, and that's okay, you know? I think that's a good sort of takeaway.
Yeah, we're all evolving. You know, whether you've got children or not, everyone's life, their own maturity, their own interests, it's an ongoing journey. So, yeah, nothing's meant to stand the test of time. Some will, but others won't.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, guys, hopefully that was helpful and made you feel a little better about maybe some of your changing friendships too. We'll catch you later.